G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Eric Reed from Reed 5 Group. He's based in beautiful Cincinnati, Ohio in the United States. Thanks for your time today, Eric.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with how we know each other. So Jansen from the Interview Connections reached out and thought you might be an excellent guest to come on the cast. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, like I said, I appreciate you having me on. I've listened to the podcast and I think there's some things that I'm excited to kind of contribute. And Jansen Interview Connections, we work with his company from time to time. And so he put us in touch.
Great. Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Well, so Reed 5 Group is an umbrella company for a handful of things. So Reed 5 Group is a media company that I started. I came up through media throughout my career, running sales and marketing teams just in the space of media, non-traditional revenue, the digital crossover, et cetera. And through that, I just built a lot of contacts. I had been working for USA Today, and I just thought it was time to break off and do a niche agency that really focused on culture, helping companies lead their sales and marketing teams. And I go into all verticals, but healthcare is a little bit of a niche for me as well, a specialty. But my company is in business to help companies that are plateaued, that aren't not necessarily struggling, Troy, but more just kind of plateaued and the business is starting to run them. And we kind of come in, work with them, assess, kind of solidify their marketing, and then try to set some sales records and build systems to help grow their sales.
Yeah, great. Two very important points in business, particularly growing small businesses, sales and also the culture, once you've got the right team obviously on board. So we'll get to those in a minute. But maybe tell us a bit more about how you started out and what year you decided to transition, jump into running your own business, and what age you were then.
Well, it was about 3 years ago. You know, I have a story that hopefully I can share later. Yeah. I started a business with my brothers a long time ago. If we want to ever get into a failure story, I've got a learning moment from that experience. But from about 3 years ago, I launched Reed 5 Group. It had just become a time for me. You know, I had run sales and marketing teams. I kind of got burned out with that. I kind of just felt like I was not a happy person. Maybe I was chasing the wrong things. So I kind of just stepped back and said, you know what, I like to strategize. I like to sit at the table. I like to discuss these kind of things with the clients. I like to really grow with them. I like to experience pain with them. If that's the case, just learn from the process. And so, you know, I launched Reed 5 Group 3 years ago with a couple clients, just two, but they were good clients. They were people that I had kind of a side hustle with, if you will, as I was getting this ready. And I knew that, you know, I could make this jump, but, you know, there was going to be some risk, but I was willing to take it. My family supported me. At the time, my kids who were in college, one was my social manager and one was my creative. Who better to have running your social than a Gen Zer, you know? So, yep. So I did that. And again, I had a couple clients and, you know, just me, I was doing it with some family help. And then I started over the past 3 years, getting some more accounts, hiring some people, optimization, strategy, et cetera. Grew into a media company called Navigator. So in the state of Ohio, there's Columbus Navigator, and now we're launching Cincinnati Navigator. It's a lifestyle digital publication. So Reed 5 Group, I do handle clients, but I've also got a few media ventures that I'm working on that we're building from the ground up.
Right. And how old were you then, like 2018 when you launched?
Well, I guess I'd be 50. 53 now. So yep. Hopefully you're thinking, man, you don't look older than 38 or something.
I was about to say that.
Yeah, right. So it was about 50. You know, too late, too soon. Who knows? It felt like the right time for me. So
yeah, good. And I've been searching for some more guests to come on that can talk about business failures, particularly. So I'm reaching out to a few at the moment that might be, because it's obviously very difficult to speak about.
Yeah.
But if you want to, if you can share that story,
Sure. I grew up with two brothers. We were very close, about 3 years apart each way. I'm in the middle, and we my younger brother was in he used to row crew, the shells, the crew, stuff like that. And he was in a horrible accident at his school where crew shells came through. I'm going to get to the point of the failure, but just to give you an idea, that he was in a life-threatening accident. And the insurance company gave him a chunk of money, and he was probably like 18 at the time, maybe 17, and what the heck to do with it. And so we looked at a couple things. He wanted to do a family business. We did some things wrong with setting up the company, but we opened up a sports apparel store. Now at the that would be before you could buy all the licensed apparel at all these different stores. We thought, hey, let's just do this. This would be cool. It lasted about a year. We lost about $15,000, which was at the time, depending on where you're at in life, it was a heck of a lot of money. It still is, I think. But it was a lot then. But here's the point. So I remember when we were meeting with vendors that came in, there was like this guy a lot. He was just really smart. And he came in and said, man, I'm so glad to be dealing with you guys. You'd be surprised how many people just open up a shop, put a sign out front, and think that their business is going to take off. And we kind of chuckled, but inside of each our head, I said, man, that,
Exactly.
damn it, that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so, so the learning there, outside of a sting of losing some money and not filing the company right, so we actually had a hard loss on that, was really just like, nothing's easy, nothing's free. You got to work at everything. It was a win because it was something we were passionate about. Sports. Our family loved it, but we had no idea what we were doing, and we just moved too quick and didn't think things through, and took way too big of a risk.
Yeah, that youthful exuberance and naivety can really get you in trouble. But it sounds like you guys pulled up stumps. That's a cricketing term here in Australia. In a year, so you didn't do too much damage, and you took some lessons away from it, which is great.
Yeah. And I will say that's interesting. Now, all three of us own our own businesses. So I'd like to think if I asked them a question, I would like to think they learned something at that moment too, because they're both very successful in their own right. So
great. All right, back on to Read 5. So do you have any key numbers you can illustrate the growth over those 3 years?
Yeah, so I don't mind doing that. So in the past 3 years, we started, I mentioned, with a couple accounts, and they were ones that I had been writing content, not writing it myself, but putting their content together. I was producing podcasts for them. I've always been a little bit out in the front. I think I like to think I am. I like to rethink things. I like to challenge. I like the what ifs, the possibilities. So for me, that was always a way as an agency, as a smaller agency, to get some of the deals that the agency wasn't getting. If you're just going in for paid search or something like that, I mean, you're wasting your time. But if you got something unique that you can specialize in, which is what we did, you get a seat at the table, you get some deals, you get some good referrals, etc. And so we were just in that first year with those two clients, we were about a $200,000 company. Is that a lot? It depends on your employees. I was pretty happy with it in the initial stages. But we've now gone 20 times that. So
wow.
In the 3 years.
That's great. So. Well done. Yeah. And what about number of team members? So you started on your own, and what have you got up to now? FTE, full-time equivalents?
Yeah. So we've got, actually, if we're going just full-time, we're looking at 5 now, but I do freelance quite a bit with a team of about 6 different third-party vendors and different things that we bring in. If we get, I have a ceiling. Most businesses, depending on what your business, I mean, if you're an e-commerce, if you're a transactional business, I guess it's, there is no ceiling. In the marketing business that I'm in, it's all about FTEs to revenue to, work capacity, et cetera, all the things you have to evaluate. And so when we bring on a new account, because we're at capacity, we actually have to hire, and you don't do a lot of full time. You bring on contractual work to handle that account, and then depending on the next contract, we might bring them on as an employee. Go ahead. I just want to make sure, I think my math was off. We're 10 times. I said 20 times. We're
Yep.
over 2 million now.
No,
So
that's still phenomenal growth. Well
yeah,
done,
yeah.
Eric. Yeah.
Okay.
So with the freelancers in there, it might be 6, maybe 7 FTE all up in the team.
Yeah,
Yeah, great.
for sure.
And when was
Yeah.
the moment you felt like you'd succeeded?
Honestly, I had the first feeling the day I walked out of USA Today and said, I'm doing this. I
Yep.
felt like I succeeded from the standpoint of win, lose, or fail. I succeeded at the fact that pulled the trigger. This is what we're doing. It's all in now. So, and then after that 12-hour feeling of success fleeted, then I realized that,
Yeah.
okay, this is where, this is where the work begins. And so,
It's what, sorry, it's what, have you read The E-Myth by Michael Gerber? It's what he calls the entrepreneurial seizure.
oh no, I have
No.
not, but I'm going to write that down.
I'll
What
send it to you after this. It's a great book.
entrepreneurial? Okay.
It's called The
Okay.
E-Myth.
Yeah, I'd love to read it. And then I think for me, it's not, I think just in the past 6 months, I felt pretty successful, but it's not because of that business. Here's the way that I feel. I feel if you know something, if you're passionate about something, if you're a good person, I mean, good people like to deal with good people. I'll let audience define what a good person is. But the point is, if you think you're aligned with what you think a good person is, then that emits and rubs off on other people. And so for me, I've never been worried about, and I don't have 100 employees that I need to pay. It's about a much smaller, which is a luxury for us. So I don't sit around and think, oh my gosh, we need to do this, or we're going to fail, we're going to do that. I feel very confident that accounts and business can always be generated because I'm not looking for lead gen magic systems. I'm all about doing the work. And so I feel like when you're responsible for that, you can always survive.
You're more
That's
about
just my opinion.
quality work that you're passionate about and sustainable growth, not going for 100 FTE. Yeah, that's great. I think a lot of business owners, I certainly matured into that over time, thinking it's not all about top line sales, etc. It is, something that you feel is a success to you and is manageable.
Yeah. I think it goes back to this question too. I'll say this is that, why are you going into business? I wasn't going into business to challenge Jeff Bezos and Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm doing that, then it's a whole different game. I'm going into business to be in strategic consulting, in marketing, in leadership with sales and marketing teams to help SMBs and startups and entrepreneurs. And so there still is not this feeling that I'm going to create $100 million company, because that's just not what I want to do.
Yep.
If it happens, I'll deal with it, but that's not what my path is.
And what does success look like to you?
Well, I think, for me, success is about, there's a financial component to it. We all want to live a life. I have 3 kids, and there's certain things I love doing with my wife, and I want to maintain that, and I want to invest in and grow the future. I want to be a good, solid community member. I want to help people where I can. So success for me in my life is a very, very human balance between work and pleasure. Success for me in business is 100% crystal clarity that all my employees know what my vision is. If you ask anybody who works for me what the mission or the vision is of Read 5 Group, they could rattle it right off. That's rare.
It's great.
Many companies struggle because and again, in full transparency, I don't have 100 employees, so it's pretty easy for me to manage the understanding, education, expectations of a smaller team. But that's not that shouldn't give us a reason to say, well, I can't have everybody know it. So for me, success is my people buying houses, my people buying cars, my people taking trips, my people having quality of life because they buy into what we're doing and they're successful and they grow.
Yep. Yeah, great. Really relevant question for you. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Well, there's a lot of buzz around growth hacking and different things like that. It would really depend on the vertical, in my opinion, but for just any business in general to grow fast, You have to come up with, you can't look at a marketing strategy for 6 months in a year. You just can't do it. I mean, you can do that at Procter and Gamble. You can do that at Ford Motor Company. I would even say you probably shouldn't do it there, but you certainly can't do that in a small business. And I almost hate to say this because I'm a big proponent of pulling the plug too early, but you need to try a lot of things. I know that's kind of a fluffy answer, because what are those things? Again, it depends on what your business is, but you need to try multiple things. You need to be watching those. You need to not be afraid to pull the plug on something quickly and double down on what is working.
Yep.
And again, it's not me. There's a gentleman named Sean Ellis who's, hacking growth and growth hacking, and everybody's talking about it. But if you're not putting the fundamentals and ideologies of growth hacking into your marketing, you're just not going to survive right now.
I totally agree with that philosophy around marketing as well. I had a good friend of mine also here in Hobart from a tech company called Vital. James is on episode 6. And that's his exact philosophy when it comes to marketing is you test for a quarter or 6 months, you pick a handful of things, you measure, monitor, and then anything that's borderline, you may roll it for another 3 months, but anything that's not working, cut it off until you find those few things that are really, really working, and you double down on those. Right. It's so important. I remember a great story, if I can digress for a second. My ex-wife's friend were over there, and he had a gazebo business. They built little outdoor gazebos, and his business partner had the rights to the Colorbond, this tin from BHP, a very big company here in Australia, basically. And I asked how they do their sales and marketing. And he said, well, they've just recently got a new sales manager in, and he pretty much just sits in the kitchen and reads the paper all day. And they're happy with that because he tested, found the one thing that really worked for them. They used to put physical gazebos up in shopping malls. And then he tested a few different things and realized that all that time of moving it around, et cetera, and just wasn't working. What worked for them was simply a full color banner that was hanging in the malls. And they'd pay a university student every week to move it to a different mall, et cetera. And that was the thing that worked for them. And unless that sales manager hadn't tested and tried and, tried some really exotic things, they wouldn't have known that was their main source of sales.
Yeah, I think that's a powerful point. I think we read, we should read books. We should talk to peers, but we were talking a little bit before the show and started, and there is no cookie cutter approach. So, I don't think billboards would work for me, but there's plenty of businesses that would probably be like, holy, crap, those things are paying dividends for me. So you gotta try. You can't go in with a lean marketing budget, easier said than done, but you've got to be prepared to throw some money out there, or at least effort and time. You don't have to pay for it, but you got to put in the time.
Yeah. Now, I've read about this before. I'd love your opinion on it, but there's some advice out there in recessions or coming out of recessions when times are really tough. That's when you should not be cutting your marketing budget, but actually investing more to, that's the best time.
Well, I believe in that 100%. I think the old story that you hear in the States, I don't know if Budweiser and Schlitz, I think were the I won't bore you with the story. The audience probably heard it. The long story short is, Budweiser and Schlitz were number 1 and 2. There was some recession in the 70s. Schlitz pulled advertising. Budweiser doubled down. Budweiser's the king of beer. Schlitz is nowhere to be found.
I can't even. So I've never heard of that brand, let alone I can't even spell it.
Yeah, it spells like you probably think it would. But the point is that whether that's tied to that example or not, it's to me, I think it's almost like investing in markets. I mean, you're going to get return on it. When things are down, pricing's better, you can negotiate better deals, all that stuff. And so again, you got to be sensitive. I get it. There's some businesses that are laying people off and doing stuff like that. So depending on what your situation is, I mean, you got to run your business and you got to know what's right for it. But don't look to marketing to cut marketing as the first option. It's done too quickly, far too often.
Absolutely. And how did you fund your business? Have any investors or bank finance along the way, or self-funded?
No. Yeah. Honestly, just because I had a couple I had a couple large annual deals that I brought with me. I was reluctant to try to do it any other way. I was prepared to do it if I had to, but fortunately, it never came to that.
Great. And if you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
I think I probably wouldn't go into my industry, not because I don't like it, but because as you know, I might choose an industry where you don't have there's an emerging technology every day, and why we think that's exciting, and it is, um, for me, it's just it causes you to recalibrate and you just got to be on top of your game. And so I feel like as I'm saying this to you, I'm like, well, what am I sounding like, some kind of loser who doesn't want to go back into it? But the point is that I think it's just what we all say, right? We love it, we'd probably never leave it, but we always say, oh, I wouldn't do it. Truth be told, I probably would do it again.
Yep.
It's easy to point out ways that are challenges, but we found a way through them the first time. We probably get excited, get our adrenaline pumping by it, and we probably would realize that's what we actually loved about it the most.
Yeah. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Yeah, I think I know the most stressful point was, and I don't know what we'll learn from this, but for me, I fortunately I had healthcare, but I had a segment of business that was live events. So I mentioned
Oh,
the
shit.
ATP 1000 here, yeah, in Cincinnati. All that stuff just came to a screeching halt,
Yeah.
obviously. But I had a big deal with the ATP, the tennis here in Cincinnati, Western Southern Open. I do music festivals in Ohio. I do all the marketing. And not only is it good money, but there's also perks, tickets and
Yep.
taking clients and family and doing stuff. And so I just really started thinking about, like, holy smokes, I've never lived through something like this. I heard about it, but can we hold on? I had companies that, I got my biggest client sent me a letter saying that they were doing their accounts receivables out to 90 days when
Right.
they used to be at 15.
Wow.
And so what do you say?
Mm.
I mean, of course we support you, do what you got to do, but I think at that moment it was kind of scary. Now, what do you learn from that? I think you just learn that, you know, don't waver. Again, easier said than done. I feel kind of like an ass, frankly, for saying don't be afraid of these things because they're scary as hell.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, you went into business because you believed in something,
Yep.
and everything can be overcome. It can be stressful. It can be. Um, there's too many reasons to jump out of something. I just think you have to stick to your convictions and trust it. You'll know when that's gone too far. I mean, you'll know when it's time to move, but I just think we got to recognize the false signs that it's time to jump and just keep plugging away.
Yeah, it was good that you were already a bit diversified, though. You had healthcare in there as well, so
Yeah.
that's really smart. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there, you brought the smartest thing out of there is diversity.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry, it's the lag there. What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Personally,
Mm.
um, I like to, I believe that I can fit. I'm a big people person. I'm a big culture person. I don't believe in cookie cutter. I believe that nobody wakes up in the morning and wants to have a bad day. I think something happens between that moment they get out of bed and they actually get to work. If they're not happy, there's something going on there. And so for me, to the detriment, sometimes I think I believe in people a little too much. You want to. I like to see people win. I like to see them achieve. Anybody can fire somebody. Making somebody better is the real skill. But um, unfortunately, just not everybody can be made better. And it doesn't mean they're a bad person. This means they're not a good fit for your business or potentially what you're asking them to do. And so I've had to really focus and learn that I need to ask advisory people I trust as advisors, people I trust as peers, and get their input because as business owners, we're just way too close, and emotion, which can't come into play in those situations, just is too strong of an emotion, or the emotion of all that is just too strong. And it can lead to decisions that are delayed or not right, and that can cost thousands and thousands of dollars. years to delay on those.
And we've all got our own biases as well. So to have external advisors or mentors or peer mentors even just point that out and say, hang on, you've already told me that, you know, you're big on people and sometimes you can be blinded by that. It may not just be the emotion of it's your business, et cetera, but if you've got a natural weakness to that, to have other people around you that are, you know, reminding you of that can also be very helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you can't be afraid of what your weaknesses are, and if you don't know what your weaknesses are, or you don't think you have any, you need to slap yourself upside the head
Yeah.
because it's okay. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean you're a loser. The failures are when you don't understand those and you don't have the people around you help guide you through that stuff.
Yeah, that's right. I love it when someone answers that age-old chestnut in the interview question, what are your weaknesses? I don't have any. We've all got weaknesses. That's why they're called strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
Yeah. And what have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Um, you know, I here's what I've enjoyed the least is that I've had people who've left the company for better, and not because they don't like the job. I'm sure some people maybe not have liked the job, but what I don't like about it is getting talent that you feel is just the right talent for you. But it's not fair. Here's the big issue as business owners that we deal with, and I'm on the side of letting the bird fly, so to speak. But we have to have good people working for us.
Yeah.
But those good people are gonna grow to be, some of them are gonna grow to be just things that we can't even imagine they're gonna be yet. And so they're gonna leave. And I think we ought to look at that as a compliment that we've helped somebody on that journey. Um, that we've helped somebody on that journey.
Yep.
And to me, that is painful and it's something that I don't like, but you've got to embrace it because it's a win for you because of helping this person. And it's a win for them. So,
yeah. And what do you love most about growing a small business?
I just think the challenges, I guess I'm going to contradict myself. So all the things that I said were a headache and you wouldn't do it again, I'll admit those are the things that I love. So,
Yeah.
I like possibilities. If there's a leaky pipe someplace, we don't go sit down at the end of it with a bucket and keep dumping it. We stop the leak first and then we go fix the damage. That's the basic rule of engineering. So in a business, nothing works perfectly because you'd never grow if it did. We're only smarter because we know what didn't work. And so I think that what's in a small business, when you take out the trash, when you make sure the lights are off, when you're doing the taxes, when you're paying payroll, when you're doing everything, there's something very stressful about it. Yes, but there's something very fulfilling about it.
Yeah.
I just think it's I like what people say, to face challenge and to rise above. That I think that's what makes us all tick if we're in the world of entrepreneurship and small business.
Yeah. What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Um, you know, I think focusing on, you know, diversifying, as you mentioned earlier, but not in the way you're saying it. The biggest mind shift for me has been that, I like the niche marketing. I like having the clients, but I want to be in publishing. I want to be when I say publishing, I mean, as a publisher of digital spaces, I want to be that community partner. I want to be somebody who's doing things good for the community. So for me, it was more about the shift that I had was more about understanding that if I have a positive human role in the community, if I have a positive human role with my staff, if I have a positive human role with my clients, that good people like to do business with good people.
Yep.
And so for me, it was, and I know again, we all talk about this, but you don't start businesses to make money. Some people get lucky, but most people fail. You start businesses because you're passionate about something, because you want to do it every day. And then, if you get lucky, if you get really lucky and you put in the time, you can start to make a good living doing it.
Yep. What's the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Um, Well, consistency, number one. And when I say consistency, what I mean by that is I have 5 people. Let's just take an example of not my company now, but I had with Gannett and Media News Group, I had a team of people that I was running in a region, and each one of them had an individual meeting with me each week. And for me, that was like, my goodness, I gotta have 10 meetings every week. And so, hey, Mike, hey, Sally, can we push this meeting off till Tuesday? That's their one important meeting. That's their one meeting with their boss, their supervisor, somebody who they're trying to impress and align with and work for. And so I think consistency and understanding, empathy, soft skills really, which are things that are overlooked right now. Those would be the 2 things that I would say.
Yeah, that reminds me of a great Benjamin Disraeli quote. I'm not sure if you've heard of: "The secret to success is constancy of purpose."
Yeah, no, I haven't heard the quote, but I've heard the source of the quote, and I mean, there's so many powerful statements about that. I said earlier to anybody who's running a small business, I used to run a lot of sales and marketing teams, and we used to have great success. I think I'm good at what I do, but people would say, in an interview for another position, or just when they're talking to you from a different level, how do you do it? How do you do it? And it's like, listen, I know we want to believe there's some kind of, magic bullet or secret recipe. It's really just being present. It's not
Yeah.
about being perfect. It's
No.
about being present
Mm.
every day. And if you just understand those things, um, you know, success happens if you're disciplined and you have a routine.
Yep, absolutely. Want to become the best manager you can be? Check out our Kick-Ass Manager course at growasmallbusiness.com. Do the course and add your fellow managers for no extra cost. Join the 30%. 70% of people quit their job because of their manager. These next 2 questions are perfect for you, I think, Eric. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening? And then we'll talk about culture after that.
Sure. So just to understand the question, adding people to adding employees, adding teammates, some wins
Yep.
and some losses there.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in, don't ask anybody how well they do the job. I don't care what kind of skills you have. I really don't. If you don't fit my company culture, you're not coming in.
Attitude and
And
aptitude.
so
There's 2 things top of my list when I'm looking for team members: attitude and aptitude.
yeah. So, I mean, because anybody in an interview is going to, of course you're going to do the job well. You've done your homework, done your research. And it's not like I'm thinking that, well, somebody's going to try to deceive me. It's just like, I really don't care, because you could do the job great, but you could be a complete cancer for the rest of my organization.
Toxic,
And so I don't want you.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't want the short-term win.
Yep.
I'm willing to develop the right person. And if they turn out to be not the right person for that job, then I'll find a spot for them somewhere else in the company, because they're still the right person
Yep.
culturally. So, I mean, I've hired a lot of salespeople. I've hired people who I thought were going to be great and they tank out in a week. I've hired people who I just liked them, or something about them. They had no experience. They turned out to be the best sales rep that I had. So I'm not sure if there's something to see from winning and losing or hiring a talent. I think if you're just consistent, just like we talked about consistency, if you're looking to fill the culture, then I just think you're going to be better off for it. I mean, if you're looking for somebody who's going to help hit your sales number for you, then why are you even leading that department?
Yep. And what are some things you'd recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Well, I'll say, first of all, that a cult, just so we understand, I talk about a culture clutter a lot. And just so we understand, culture is not blue jeans on Friday,
Foosball table in the corner.
work, yeah, all that stuff. And there's still a lot of businesses that think, oh, that's a great culture. Well, that's not a culture. A culture is, and you have to understand, well, let me finish that. A culture is just the presence of rules, belief, acceptable behaviors, what's tolerated, what's not tolerated, very clear, very clear. And a culture is evolving. It changes. It can change daily or weekly. And it's discussed in your meetings and all those kind of things. So to me, the number one thing that you have to do in a culture is understand that a culture is different for each person. You know, if you're looking at a room full of 10 sales reps at cubicles, all you see is the sales reps. But if you could see it through their eyes, all of them are seeing different things, and you would look at just a complete cluttered floor of things all over the place. So you've got to get everybody in line. It starts with, they need to know what the mission is. They need to know what the value statement or whatever your business goal is. They need to understand what's desired in 1 year, what's desired in 3 years, what's desired in 5 years. They need to be a part of it. You need to be transparent. You know, these days of not, I'm not saying share all the intimate details of your finances, but for crying out loud, these people, if you've got the right culture, they're busting their butt, they're leaving it on the table. They care about your company when they're working, when they're not working, because it's their company. And so, you know, they need to be valued. They need to stand in line and understand and follow the rules, but they need to feel like they're not just making money for everybody else. They need to believe that they're part of something bigger. So,
There's a
and
higher
if you've
purpose.
got a manager who's managing more than, yeah, I feel like if you've got a manager who's managing more than 5 people, I just don't think you can give the time to develop a culture and work with people on a weekly basis.
Yep. Very
Now, I
good.
understand the challenge there is, you know, if we pay a sales manager $100,000, I can't have 5 sales managers if I've got 20 employees. That's 500,000. Well,
Yes.
you know, I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but, you know, crunch some numbers the other way. If your people are only performing at 60%, you know, what's that mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. That's right. Anything else on culture you want to talk about there before we move on to the next question?
Well, the only thing I'd say on the last thing I'd say about the culture is let's just be honest. When we hear the word culture, everybody throws it around. It's like a buzz phrase. Well, culture, no, you ask 10 people what it is, there's 10 different definitions. So I don't pretend to be a culture guru. You know, it's kind of like we talked about the growth hacking. You know, you have to, I don't want to try things, but you have to you can't create a culture if you're not taking what's important to the people who are going to live in that culture into consideration. So if you think you're going to create a culture for your team, that's a miss right there.
Yep.
They need to be involved in creating that culture.
Yes. Yep. I agree. Tell the audience how you've handled balance.
You know, I've struggled with it. If I'll be honest with you, I've read books. I follow. There's Carlos Hidalgo, who's kind of talks about you know, obsessed with work and almost losing everything, trying to, you know, to chase this perfect. I talked about perfection versus being present, but I've struggled with it. You know, I've had challenges in my life, and I think unfortunately in anything, it's kind of dangerous. It's almost like standing on the edge of a bridge, if you will. But you have to get to a point where you realize that, wait a minute, something bad's going to happen here, and I'm not prepared to go on with that as a consequence. It's not worth it. And so I need to be successful. I need to grow my business. That's a passion of mine. It's a purpose of mine. But there's more people in the world than in my world than just me. The Read 5 group is significant because everywhere in my house is the number 5. There's 5 people in our family.
Yep.
And that's big for my wife. You know, there's tattoos in the family with the number 5 on it. There's wall hangings. There's all kinds of stuff. And so Read 5 was for me to say, listen, this business is important, but it's our business. And, you know, we together will balance things.
Yeah, that's good. That's a really good philosophy, I think, and approach to it. How much professional development have you invested in yourself over the years? So books, courses, training, conferences, etc.
Well, not enough. I do think that we don't give enough credit for networking. It's free, but it's valuable. I have taken a board position, which with the American Marketing Association Cincinnati chapter, and I'm responsible for building workshops. So I'm going to contribute more to people learning, which is kind of fun from that way. I've taught a couple classes as a guest lecturer at IU, graduate of Kelley School of Business, Indiana University, a pretty prestigious business school.
Massive.
Yeah, and I've got another one coming up the end of the month for you know, masters, the students who are pursuing their masters. That's exciting because those are people who've been out in the workforce. But even me personally, I don't read as much as I should. I do get my daily updates. I get a good book recommendation. I'll check out, I'll check it out, like the one that you were talking
Yep.
about.
Mhm.
I think once things open up, I'd like to get more involved with some seminars out there and different things. I'm not big on the virtual. I'll be honest with you. I've tried a few. I just didn't feel that they made the connection with me. But it's something I believe in that we all should be doing. I should be doing it more.
Yeah. And have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
Yeah, well, I've had people. I haven't had anybody who was identified this is my mentor or my coach, but I've had very influential people who've helped me throughout my career. There was a gentleman named, and the one that comes to mind is Ed Tyner, was his name, from Gannett USA Today. Um, just Man, when he walked in a room, he didn't have to open his mouth, and he just owned that room. He was just very good at listening. In sales and marketing, sometimes we have a tendency to just talk a lot.
Mm.
Yeah, we all listen, we know that's a basic skill, but he could really size up a situation. And so him and I used to meet a little bit. I used go up, he was the president of the region, and we'd go talk, and I'd really try to pick his brain on stuff. And then I guess from a business standpoint, that's the one who's probably been uh, very influential for me. And then I got into media in the alternative news industry. So I'll give a shout out to Kevin McKinney, who started, he was a small business owner who built this from the ground up very successfully. But he gave me a shot. He was all about community, culture, looking at people for what they're capable of, not about how they look. Just because he's not wearing a tie doesn't mean he can't own a room in a business meeting.
Mhm.
He just got me to look at things a lot differently. Now, keep in mind, he used to, bring in massage tables for his employees, and he used to meditate, and had a meditation area in the room. So he was very forward thinking, but it was a great environment. And it was nice to see that it wasn't always about the white shirt and the red tie and the blue sport coat to be successful in business.
What was the name of his business that he built up?
Well, it was called Nuvo. He came from a family. He came from a family, which is like a Village Voice, or a Metro Times, or an LA Weekly, the standing weekly publication. But he came from a very conservative family. His father actually worked for President Carter as a financial advisor, and his family owned a bank, First Indiana Bank. So this was kind of his kind of foray out into business, the way he wanted to do it. And he's big on a green footprint. He's true to his convictions. I guess the long story short,
Yep.
you knew where he stood at all time, unwavering, not angry if you didn't see his way, happy to have a conversation with you.
Yep.
But he knew who he was and knew what he stood for.
Yeah, great. And do you have a board of directors or advisors at the moment?
I do not know.
So you've exited a business. Any final tips there, or advice you give the audience, or do you want to comment on what it was like doing business with family?
Business with family was fine. I'll say that now because we were all single at the time. If it was business as family and we were all married and had kids, I'd probably have a different answer for you. But we weren't beholden to anybody other than ourselves. So, you know, exiting a business with family, I would just say that, again, this is pretty textbook and pretty cliche, but I believe I used to coach youth sports, and the reality is, if you don't hammer home the basics, then no matter how much you think you understand them, if you're not practicing the basics, you just aren't as good as you're going to be. So, having said that, I just think that you just need to be, true to your convictions, and walk the path that you want to walk. And so sometimes it's not fun, and it's not challenging to leave a company and start something new, but you just need to do it.
All right, Eric, on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Uh, I think the hardest thing about growing a small business is wearing the hat of your leadership team.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I'm speaking from my shoes. I didn't start a business with a marketing director, a sales director, an acquisition director, a CFO. If you've got your executive leadership team in place, then you're you're a little bit better off because you've got key people who can be responsible for the divisions of the business. I think the challenge for any business, and particularly for me, was, you know, I'm the CMO, I'm the, chief revenue officer, I'm all those things, and man, there's not enough time in the day,
Yeah.
and so you really need to, give some responsibility off if you've got somebody you can do it to, and if you don't, you need to cut. You need to, the mentality of cutting what doesn't make you money. Just look at it like return. If it's not paying dividends, whether it's fulfillment or actual revenue, you got to cut it.
Yeah. Favorite business book would just help you the most?
There's Marketing Rebellion by a Mark Schaefer. There's actually two books. I'm big on the human side, but Marketing Rebellion and H to H by that's who's that? That's Brian Kramer. So H to H. So he wrote a book on it's not B2B, it's not B2C, it's human to human.
Yeah,
and so both of these two wrote books about how the dialogue, the narrative for sales and marketing has changed. I've got I got one kid who's in the business world, 23. I've got two other kids who are getting ready to graduate college, and the business world that they want to be in is much different than the business world that I came up in. And I love it. I embrace it. I think it's great. I think that what they want out of the world is powerful. But we need to understand that as leaders today, that the leaders tomorrow are going to be much, much different than we are. And so that humanization, that importance of leaving a green footprint, if you don't think your clients of tomorrow are going to care about your social position, your environmental footprint, your eco footprint, however you want to word it, that matters to people. And so you need to be human and stop being so, not that we don't want to be data driven. We need to be. I understand that. We got to understand the data points. We got to make sure we're not losing money. We got to make sure that everything's clicking. But man, we've got to stop and find a way to be human again.
Yeah. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
I do listen to a handful of podcasts. I generally will check out different ones. I don't go to one over and over again. There's a simulator tool that I use at the name is slipping me, but it's a simulator tool from, if you look up Sean Ellis from Growth Hacking, he's got, because it's like a .io, but he's got a simulator tool I subscribe to. The name is kind of irrelevant. It's just the way you get into it. But essentially you can play with marketing things with Play Money. It's a simulator, and you can kind of, test some theories out, as you talked about, experimenting, testing, and so forth with marketing. So, yeah.
One tool you'd recommend to help growing a small business?
Well, I think you need a CRM. I'm not going to say you need Salesforce. I'm not going to say you need, HubSpot or anybody else. I mean, there's 1,000 of them out there. But I do know, when we look at the Navigator sites like Columbus Navigator and soon to be Cincinnati Navigator, the CRM tool is just so powerful. We talked about not having the, chief revenue officer. We talked about not having your leadership team in place. I don't want to say that AI will replace that, because it certainly won't. But that, to me, the first thing you ought to invest in is a CRM system that can do more than just your basic CRM.
Yeah.
But I think that's paramount.
I agree. Finally, my favorite question: what would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
I'd say stay the course. I don't think I've hit as many roadblocks as other people have, and I'm not naive enough to think that it might not be tomorrow, next month, or whatever. It's always out there. But I think I would tell myself that you're going to be told, you're going to hear, you're going to feel that this was not right. You need to always remember this day, the first day, of why you did this. Don't ever forget that.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thanks for your time today, Eric. I think the audience get a lot of value out of your journey and what you've shared with us today. I really appreciate you coming on the cast.
Well, I really like like to thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation. And I say that seriously. You've probably been on some podcasts, you've done some stuff. Sometimes, you know, the conversations don't really go where you hope they'd go, but
Yeah.
this was a great, I just really enjoyed talking to you and sharing some of the stories that we shared back and forth.
Yeah,
So
same
thank you.
here. Thank you.
And for our audience, we'd greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcast help with their growth will find us.